So, welcome. Thank you for attending today's session. We've got an early one. It's great to see we've got 41 people here. So we have a panel discussion. Local governments form the backbone of statewide GIS projects. And facilitating today's discussion is Kiley with CGIA. Collen has been working in GIS North Carolina for over 20 years. She's currently the GIS Coordination Program Manager with the Center for Geographic Information and Analysis, and supports all the committees and working groups of the Geographic Information Coordinating Council. So we encourage you throughout the presentation to be entering your questions in the chat box, and we will be getting to those, I believe, at the end or potentially throughout. That's probably your call, Colleen, and handing over to you.
Thank you. So welcome everyone. It's early in the morning, so I appreciate you joining us. We're going to have a discussion today with some members of the local government committee. And what I'd like to do is get started here with our presentation, and here we go. All right, so what we're going to talk about today is I'm going to give you a little overview of the GICC and the LGC, and we'll go through some member panel introductions. We'll have a discussion, and then we'll open it up for some Q&A at the end. And if you have questions throughout, we'll pepper those in, because what I'd like to do when we have this panel discussion is make it a discussion. So the GICC, it is a mouthful to say Geographic Information Coordinating Council, so you'll just hear me say GICC throughout this. What it does is it coordinates geographic information in the state by promoting GIS technology, demonstrating the value of GIS for decision-making, working collaboratively on initiatives and projects. And I would say that is one of the most important things that the GICC does, is it brings together the entire community in North Carolina, local governments, state government, federal agencies, and the private sector. So we hear, examine, and resolve issues, we share ideas and lessons learned, build consensus, and we develop standards and recommended practices. And then we adopt guidelines, policies, and strategies. And so some of the things that you'll hear today from our panelists are experiences with developing standards and coming up with policies and strategies. So the GICC is actually established by statute in 2001, but it's been around since 1991. The statute sets forth the membership of the council and its committees. So the council has representatives appointed by the governor, House of Representatives, the Senate, state agencies, local government, federal government, and the private sector. So we try and bring in everybody to look at the issues in GIS across the state. Here's an organizational chart of the GICC. So there's a lot of subcommittees, and they're kind of broken up into two different types of committees. So there's the overall GICC, and then there's three users groups underneath of that. So we've got a local government users group, state government users group, a federal government users group. And then on the other side of things are the technical committees. So we have the Management and Operations Committee. That is the committee that meets in between each of the GICC meetings to set the council agenda for the meetings. It's composed of the chairs of all of the other committees. So they kind of work on the business of the GICC in between meetings. So if something comes up that needs to be addressed in between GICC meetings, the Management and Operations Committee is the one that takes that on. And then the Statewide Mapping Advisory Committee is the committee that is that sets forth policies and procedures for GIS in the state. So for instance, right now there's a bunch of working groups underneath of that. There's one that's looking into statewide hydro, another one that just proposed standards for municipal boundaries, addresses. So there's a lot of different framework data sets that the Statewide Mapping Advisory Committee is looking into right now. And that's where local government and the LGC, they really do form the backbone of these committees, because a lot of the data that we produce in the state comes from local government. So without local governments, we really couldn't do much. And then the last one is the Technical Advisory Committee. This one is a little bit more specialized, and it's probably the most technical committee. They often are only working on just about one thing at a time. Right now, the TAC, as we call it, is looking into policies and practices around sharing of infrastructure data across the state. So this one usually looks in depth into one thing and then comes up with a report on that subject. And then there may be additional investigation into that afterwards. There may be some recommendations. It all depends on what the group is looking into and what the task is. So that's the subcommittees of the GICC. Underneath of that are working groups from the various committees. Most of these are underneath of the SMAC, but some of them are underneath some of the other committees. So the purpose of the GICC, like I said before, is to advise geographic information the purpose of the LGC is to advise the GICC on issues, problems, and opportunities related to GIS within the local governments. And it's to inform the local government users about the status of GIS activities across the state and efforts in state government and the actions of the GICC. So the LGC members, they're really a liaison between their local government and the state and federal government committees. So we really need that coordination and that communication back between all of the committees in the state to make this work. It is composed of representative organizations, the Association of Regional Councils of Executive Directors, so the COGS. That spot right now is open. We are trying to get a new member for that one assigned. The Carolina chapter of URISA, we have Pam Carver representing them. Association of County Commissioners, we have Ben Strauss representing them. The chapter of American Planning Association, we have Alice Wilson representing them. League of Municipalities, we have Natalie Walton-Corbett representing them. The Local Government Information System Association, Nickel Giza, that's Josh Norwood. Property Mappers Association, we have Jeff Hyder, who is our newest member. And Geographic Information Coordinating Council, we have Todd Shanley. So we made some changes to our bylaws this past year. The statute members defined in the actual statute, we've now redefined them as executive committee members. What we saw was our meetings were getting so long that we needed to split it into two groups. Most of the other working groups have an executive committee and then they have a general membership. The executive committee will meet in between general membership meetings to work on some business and to set the meeting agenda. So that's what we're doing now. So we have two separate meetings, executive and general membership. We determined that we needed some additional members. We have only 8 members on the executive committee. So the membership felt that we needed 2 additional ones. We're going to have 2 new at-large members, which we're working on filling right now. And just like before, everyone is opened. Everyone is invited to the general membership and the executive committee meetings. These are open to all. So the quarterly meetings are open to the public. They're always virtual. They're every 3 months, about 2 weeks following the GICC quarterly meetings. Our next meeting is November 17th, and the meetings are posted in January for the year. So we typically come up with the meeting dates at our last meeting for the previous year, and then we'll post them all in January so you can get those on your calendar and block your time off if you're interested in attending. So let's get to our panel. because this is the important part today. I have Natalie Walton-Corbett. She has been working as the GIS coordinator for the city of Greenville since 2015. In 2019, she created a community called Hurry Up for all local government GIS personnel to come together for community and support for responding to natural disasters with GIS. Prior to joining the city of Greenville, she worked as a GIS coordinator for Wilson County from 2008 to 2015 and is a 2007 graduate of App State University with a Bachelor of Science in Geography. We also have Alice Wilson, who is our previous president or chair of the committee. Alice is the GIS manager for the city of New Bern for almost 20 years. She has a BS in urban and regional planning with a minor in geography from ECU and a master's certificate in GIS science and technology from NC State. She's a local government representative and to the NC Statewide Mapping Advisory Committee and the American Planning Association for NC for almost 10 years. For 10 years, sorry. Josh Norwood is an experienced GIS manager with demonstrated history of working in local government with skills in ArcGIS, cartographic mapping, analysis, database management, and government. He's worked as the GIS manager for Pender County since 2013. He's a current board member for the NCAUG, Nickel Giza representative on the local government committee, and local government representative on the working group for orthoimagery and elevation. Sallie Vaugh has served Person County in North Carolina for 6 years as the GIS manager, but prefers the title map boss. She has a BA in anthropology and an MA in geography, both from East Carolina University. Sallie is a member of the Utilities Working Group for the GICC TAC and the Working Group for Enhanced Emergency Response. In her free time, she enjoys playing the euphonium in the local wind ensemble and hiking with her husband, Evan. So let's welcome the committee members with a little virtual clap, and let's get started with our discussion. So the first discussion question, how did you become involved in your professional organization? And how did you become involved in the local government committee? And I'll let you guys decide who to jump in first.
I guess I can start us off. Good morning, everybody. I'm kind of excited to see so many people here this early. I'm proud of you guys. I'm representing the North Carolina League of Municipalities, and I've known about them since college. The city of Greenville does not work with them directly at this time, but they asked me if I could be their representative. So the League of Municipalities is a great group. They are a member organization for cities and towns, and they offer different types of consulting support, like legal and financial and different things, as well as legislative support. Say anything that a smaller city or town might need at any moment that they don't have the staff for. The League of Municipalities is really a fantastic organization that supports all that. And they have offices all across North Carolina, regional offices. So they're, kind of close by to anybody who needs them. And they support cities and towns from the mountains all the way to the coast. And they've been around for like 100 years. I mean, it's really a wonderful support organization for small and larger cities alike. You don't have to be a tiny city that doesn't have much staff to use them. And there's larger organizations that also use them for any sort of support. So, and then I just take back information to them as needed as far as GIS goes that would affect their daily operations. And I think I've been a member of the LGC for 2 or 3 years now. And it's been a very interesting and eye-opening experience getting to know kind of the behind the scenes, the cogs, the wheels, how everything turns with all of these different projects and data sets that the state is working on behalf of the local governments.
Colleen, I'll go next. This is Josh. So I do serve a couple different roles on the LGC, but as far as the organization I represent currently is GICC. Again, that's a mouthful as well, but North Carolina Local Government Information Systems Association. And really how I got involved in that organization, I've been pretty fortunate in my tenure with Pender to be involved in a lot of groups, a lot of committees, across different aspects of local government. GICC being one of them. I can't tell you how many times I've had some GIS folks at other conferences, other workshops, other training, ask me why I'm going to an IT conference. And for me, spending most of my time under the IT umbrella here in Pender County, I mean, it's been pretty obvious for me at how the two go hand in hand. I'm very much involved in our IT department, from budgeting, from strategic planning to servers to backup to security, and the list goes on and on for me. So, again, I've been very, very fortunate to be able to attend a lot of their training. I've enjoyed over the years, especially prior to COVID. COVID kind of changed everything, and the amount of material being included in conferences and symposiums and stuff. But seeing the addition of some GIS focused oriented training at those conferences has been great. Not to mention some of which are on this call, but that organization put together a GIS strike team. Sallie was on it, and three others, for Pender County and some other jurisdictions for Hurricane Florence. So just seeing the integration, seeing the support, and the additional resources, the additional contacts has been fantastic. So, but I believe I was first on the LGC because of one of the working groups that we'll talk about shortly, the working group for orthophotography and elevation. So I actually believe that's what got me on the LGC first. And then I was asked by GICC organization to serve this role on their behalf. So that's how I got involved, and it's been great. So
I guess I'll go next. Like Josh mentioned, I was part of that strike team that relieved him after Hurricane Florence, and that the outcome of that was really the realization that we as GIS people need to get organized well in advance of catastrophic events like Florence, and figure out ways that we can collaborate ahead of time to help one another. I'll also have to, shout out to Alice Wilson, who did a fair amount of GIS work for a neighboring county that didn't have a GIS department. And so based off of the needs that we saw and the success that we saw out of Alice's shop, we started having some conversations that we needed a group that was focused on emergency response. And so one of these groups, the group that came out of that is the Working Group for Enhanced Emergency Response, WGEAR or WEGER, depending on who you ask. So I was on that team initially, and then the opportunity came by to join a technical advisory committee working group that's specific to utilities. And utilities, I mean, we all deal with utility information, but utilities have been a part of my life since birth. My father was a water and sewer contractor. My grandfather built bridges and highways. My first GIS job was mapping utilities, and now I work in Person County, where 20% of the land in this county is utility owned, which means everything we do, we've got that utility hat on. And so when that opportunity came by to be a part of that technical advisory committee, I felt like that sort of unique involvement we have in utilities in Person County would provide a lot of value to that group. And so I signed up.
And I can attest that you have provided a lot of value to that group. Alice?
Yeah, so I've been on I'm on the LGC, and I go to the SMAC meeting, report to them what the LGC is working on, our concerns and issues and stuff like that. I've been there for quite a while. And then we added, probably about 10 years ago, the planning part in NCAPA. I asked that, I realized as a planner, in my dreams anyway, in my hopes and goals to be a planner, that we weren't really being represented in the local government committee. And so I asked, I think, Tom Tribble or maybe Jeff Brown at the time. And I think it was Jeff Brown was great enough to add us to the group. And so represent planning utilizes GIS a lot. And we talk about storms and stuff, but we know more storms are coming. So how do we plan better to be more resilient? So I know here in New Bern, we're doing a lot of resiliency, but I see a lot of other communities doing that as well. So that was a great interest to me. So I guess I got originally invited by Julie Stamper, who's up in Pasquotank County, and asked me to join the group. And so I wasn't really sure. I thought that was something I wanted to do, but I was so glad that I did, because it's just amazing to see all the hard work that local governments are doing, and all the folks behind the scenes, and as well as the state folks like Collen and the others that are there doing just unbelievable amount of work to make us look good in our GIS jobs. Thanks.
Thanks. So I just posted a question to everyone in the chat. We do have these 2 open at-large seats for the LGC, and I'd love to get your opinion on what other professional organizations you think should be a part of the LGC that should be represented on there. And we'll move on to our next question now. So how does being a member of the LGC benefit your jurisdiction?
So I know that Alice and Sallie definitely just touched on this a little bit, but the LGC hopefully is supporting everybody, maybe a little bit more than you realize. If you're going to NC1 map and you're using the aerials that the states provided, then this is data that the LGC has helped guide. And it's, for some of this stuff, this is stuff we can't live without on our day-to-day GISing. So y'all know how important all this stuff is. In Greenville, we really worked hard to get our addresses in compliance, and that takes a lot of support from the GICC to help us understand, what these new requirements are. Just having the support of the LGC is one of the biggest values. I mean, you don't have to call a consultant every time. The LGC and the GICC is really guiding and helping support where you're supposed to be at. They're not just asking for something or throwing something at you and then letting you flounder on your own and figure out what you need. But it's those daily data sets that the LGC has worked so hard at pulling together that I think all of us are using every day, that we really find valuable. And then all these working groups like Uyghur that have been so helpful. They come out of, we didn't plan to have a Uyghur. We found that we needed the need for it and started pulling it together. So it's just things like that. And, we have a place where we can pull those things together when we decide, or we find that we have a need for a data set or a support group or an organization or anything like that.
So I'll go next. For me, I think it's just bringing a voice to different jurisdictions, regardless of your size. Pender is by far not the smallest county. It's not the most or least populous county, but just being able to be involved, to be able to be aware of what's going on in and around the state, having those discussions, what problems are you seeing in your jurisdiction, your region, so just being able to have that platform to be able to discuss those problems, those issues, maybe even solutions, sharing them with other jurisdictions on the other side of the state. Most of the time, someone's been through what you're going through. And in a lot of cases, there's no need to reinvent the wheel. So just having that platform to be able to have your jurisdiction, even if it's a town, a council of governments, whatever it may be that you're representing, having a platform where you can vocalize stuff that you're hearing or problems you're seeing at your shop or in your county or whatever your jurisdiction may be. So I think that's one of the biggest benefits in it. And again, with any type of training or board you serve on, any organization you participate with, the networking that is provided to you, you know, it's really hard to put a number on it as far as how important that is. You know, being able right now, I can think, you know, depending on what the problem is, there are so many people across this state that at any given time, any given problem, you know, I can pick up the phone and call. But just having that platform to communicate and to bring awareness to other folks of what's going on around you is extremely beneficial.
So I guess I'll talk as well. So I think I really kind of got involved in the LGC or heard about them several years ago when we were doing the census, not this past census, but I guess the earlier censuses that we've had, you know, just having that information and guidance on how do you challenge. We successfully challenged some census estimates and stuff that I don't think if we didn't have communication with the GICC and other organizations through the state that we would have been able to be successful in that. And just now we see with the redistricting that we're getting this year, how kind of crazy this whole, because of the COVID, you know, how kind of crazy the census is, you know, you have local governments that are especially small local governments that might not have the staff or the skills, and having a place that you can go and reach out to a community and get support and ask questions, I think it's just amazing. And you know, I'm so glad that here in North Carolina, you get to be a part of that. And, you know, anything, if you have issues, we have a great source to go out and tap to ask questions and get response. And everybody's very good about sharing information, you know, hey, I figured out how to do this, that kind of thing. And just, you know, being out here in Eastern North Carolina where it's kind of, or used to be the only GIS person out here, but we have grown, so which is always good. Just to talk to somebody and you say the word GIS and they know what the heck you're talking about. It's kind of nice to reach out to and have those communications with others.
Alice, the census information over the past year, I feel like has really been important to the local governments. And we're really lucky that we have we have one member that's a GICC member and the state demographer who have been presenting at the GICC meetings, at the SMAC meetings, at the LGC meetings. So they've been really in tune and making sure that they're getting out there to all of the working groups. And I feel like we've had a lot of good opportunities to have communication and ask them questions. So that's been, I think, a really good thing to have. And it also shows that the GICC members are involved also in these the subcommittees. We bring them in to talk about specific subjects. So the census, I think, is a really good example of how well we're all working together. Sallie?
I was just going to mention that for me, it's been very beneficial to be exposed to the other side of like the North Carolina Parcels Project. Like we know that, you know, quarterly we get asked to upload our parcel information to the statewide database, which gets consumed into a layer that's then published back out. That might seem like a very like mundane task, like, oh, it's beginning of the quarter, I need to do this again. But being part of the LGC has helped me understand the incredible value of that across the state, and what a really kind of cool and innovative project that actually is. And it's a very mature project at this point. It works well. We have a lot of participating members. Then on the other side, the Uyghur group and the TAC working group are very early, you know, in their stages of development. And so for me, it's been kind of neat to see a mature program versus something that's kind of getting started, and how, you know, kind of how you get from point A to point Z, really. It's given me a better sense of what goes on at the state level and how we all sort of benefit from that and contribute to it.
I think, Sallie, you've got a great example of seamless parcels and how it's benefited y'all in a time of need. You want to tell us real shortly about that? Because I think this is a wonderful example.
Yeah, so we're everything GIS we do is on premise. We don't have vendors. We don't do any of that, and that's great. But it's also not great. We got hit by a really, really awful ransomware attack on June the 1st of last year, which took down our GIS server. But you can't not have a GIS website. And so using the resources available on NC1 Map and our own parcels that we had given to the NC Parcel Project, just a couple weeks before, I was able to put up a basic, GIS website to replace what was taken down by the ransomware attack. And we were able, we got hit on a Saturday. By Sunday, my replacement site was up and running, and we were still able to process permits and assist people at the tax department and provide a basic level of service very easily and very quickly. And without the foresight of that NC Parcels project, perhaps even a decade ago, that would not have been reality.
I think that's a phenomenal example. It's kind of funny, anybody that's been through it, the date of ransomware if you've had it, because we have, and I know that date by heart.
That parcel project, I mean, it wouldn't happen without local governments. It's your data. But we recently did a needs assessment across the state agencies. And one of the questions we were asking is, what have we done well? And what are some data layers that are really good? And without exception, the state agencies are using that layer, and they're using it for everything, and they depend on it. And so the benefit that has provided to the state is, I'd love to put a dollar amount on that, because I would love to show the legislators how important that one is. And it is a huge success story for us. Okay, so next question. Which GICC committees and working groups do you serve as local government representatives? So we've mentioned some of these so far. Tell us which ones you're serving on and what you're doing on those.
So I am serving on the working group for ortho and elevation. So this is clearly where our state ortho program is run through. Ben Shelton with the CGIA does a phenomenal job of, wrangling the cats here for all moving parts for this. And I didn't, I thought that this was a really interesting group to be a part of, because ortho and imagery is out of my wheelhouse. I can do GIS data all day long, but when we get into the nitty-gritty of imagery, I've got less experience there. I've not had a lot of need for any sort of in-depth usage of it, other than throwing it on my map as a base map and rolling. So being a part of it and being a part of the organization at this point, it's since we've gone through the state a couple of times at this point, it's kind of know what we're doing, but there's always changes and new things to think about, new technology to work with. So it's really phenomenal to be a part of the back end of that, to learn more of that. And I'm just one of those people that I always like to learn. So being a part of something I didn't know a lot about to begin with was really fun and interesting to me. This year, this round, they're delivering the color infrared imagery, the fourth band, and that's just part of the stuff that comes through with the working group. What else is needing? What else can we provide? What else can we do? And having an input on that side of it is kind of nice, because everything that the CGI does, it trickles down to the local governments, but just as equally, the local governments are trickling back up to it, and it can't function without the input from the local governments.
And I'll just add to what Natalie just said. I can't add too much, but I do serve on that same working group for orthophotography and elevation, and for a lot of those same reasons. You know, I don't have a lot of experience myself either with the back end of what goes on collecting any of that information. So it's been great to learn about it. Again, just like being on the LGC as a platform to have a voice, you know, it's just another avenue for being able to get your voice out there to see what's going on. You know, I understand the importance of that orthophotography at a local government level, at really any level, but speaking specifically on local governments, I mean, I can't really think of a department in Pender that doesn't use our GIS website for some reasons, and most of them are relying on that aerial photography. So just being able to talk with the folks that are responsible for that. Natalie is right. Ben has done a wonderful job over the year. Local governments, you know, we're so fortunate. You know, that was a burden years ago, actually, when I was first getting into GIS, that you had to worry about yourself. You know, you had to send out RFPs and all this good stuff and meet with vendors and come up with your own specs and all this stuff. So it's been a tremendous weight lifted off of a lot of government entities. Now I understand there's ones that have flights done every year or in between, you know, so not necessarily speaking on them, but still the fact as far as the cost, you know, being of no cost really to local governments, and most of your legwork being taken out of our hands has just been phenomenal. So I'm very appreciative of the state, the 911 board, for their continued funding of their project. But when I first was asked to serve on that working group, I really wasn't sure what to expect. And North Carolina is just super blessed to have just so many phenomenal, brilliant experts in so many industries that serve the GIS community. And orthophotography elevation is of no exception. And there's so much going on that I never knew about, from LiDAR to elevation to coastal stuff, underwater stuff, work that gets done for all kinds of disasters, mudslides. You know, it's not just hurricanes. There's someone collecting data for just about anything that happens. So being part of this working group, you know, learning all of these new things that our state is doing and employees and government officials are working on has been pretty cool. But again, it goes back to just another platform to communicate and bring awareness to other folks.
I guess I'll go next. I'm not even sure what all committees. I know that I'm on the Uyghurs group that's kind of taking a break right now. We've been practicing and doing some really good stuff, as Sallie indicated, that kind of some trial runs if we have an emergency. You know, how, and it just goes beyond floods and hurricanes. Obviously, we have fires and flash floods and other issues that we need to look at. But last year, I was able to partially due for COVID, if you can find something positive about it, to attend a lot of working groups like the TAC and the hydro working group and stuff like that, and listen to the discussions and work that's being done. And I think that, you know, as you know, local government GIS folks, or whether you're local governments, that, you know, if you could attend some of these meetings, I think it's really important to get an understanding of all the great work and our work and the input that they need and we need as a local government committee to make sure that we're, you know, we're doing what the work that represents everybody, not just us. So if you can participate in those and give feedback, especially like I know Collen sends out questionnaires, you know, what are some of your needs? If you can make sure that you just take a moment and reply to those, it's really, really important work as we work towards creating work plans on what we're going to work on. You know, these are all a bunch of volunteers that don't get paid to give their time, and so they're trying to do good work, and we want to make sure that they are doing good work. I know one of the data sets is really a hot topic right now, at least for us here in Eastern North Carolina, is the hydro data set. It's a really important data set that has been going on for quite a while, and I think they're finally moving forward. So be thinking as a local government and other agencies, what kind of data, what kind of attributes do you need to make this data set as good as an important data set as it is. I think it's been mentioned a couple of times, you know, especially smaller communities that maybe don't have the staff or the resources to purchase data or go out and create their own data, having this available for free basically is really key to making us all work and do the things we need to. I know there's just other, take a look at the work plan that's on the GICC and the local government's work plan, and see if you see something that has an interest that you might like to, help participate in and give feedback on. So I think that's really key. Thanks.
So our work plans, you can reach through the LGC website, and I believe I've got a link to that on the last slide. And I wanted to mention the W Gear working group is really more of a community. So it's something that if you would like to get access to emergency data during a storm event, sign up now, and you can contact me, and you get access to essentially an ArcGIS hub site where data is stored. Some of that data is available to everyone. So we would have things easily available there, like storm surge. But then some of it may not be available to everyone out there, maybe structured data or something that we might need to keep private within the local government community. So it's a great way for you to share your local data with the state. It's a great way to share applications. And we've tried to think ahead about what kind of maps you may need to produce, or what kind of actions you may need to take and make things like the mobile applications and kind of pre-stage maps available to you. So we know that during an event, you're strapped for time. You have so many things being thrown at you. So we've tried to create this hub site so that it's a place where you can go and get stuff done very quickly, and have the tools already for you. And then elevation and hydro, I also wanted to mention those two things. Josh mentioned elevation and Alice mentioned hydro. The hydro working group has been going on for quite some time. And it's really at the point now where I believe that they're coming up with a schema for the state, and the local government tie-in to that for, say, stormwater and culverts and things like that is incredibly important. And so the state's going to be reaching out to find out what the local governments need from an improved hydrology data set, hydrography, sorry. And so that's going to be coming up in the next 6 months. And we'd love to get your feedback from that. So we'd love to be able to reach out to you. And elevation is something that I think is coming up. We're right on the cusp of that. We have LiDAR data for the entire state. And the LiDAR data has been a challenge to work with because of the file sizes, I believe. I think that it's been worked with in the private sector. It's been worked with a lot in academics. And what we'd like to do is make it easier to work with for local governments and for state agencies. So CGIA is working with emergency management, who has a copy of that data, to try and get it onto the cloud. And then we're going to be trying to figure out what people need from that. Are there services that we can put out there that allow people to view it or extract things from it? So that's something that I think in the next year or two, we'll be seeking feedback on. And again, we really need local government input on that. So Sallie?
I'm gonna piggyback on the conversation about the hydro. Like, as a smaller jurisdiction, the only information we have available to us is from the USGS, and it was intended to be used at a particular scale that doesn't really apply to the majority of the uses we have. And so it's nice to know that there's a group that's working on that, that's going to take those considerations of scale, into account, and that the schema is going to be as robust as possible. So we'll be able to answer not only where the hydro is, but different information about that hydro has been taken into account. The data we have was not created for the use that we currently have, and so we're anxiously awaiting the outcome of that project. And then other than that, I serve on the Uyghur group just as a user. We did work through a couple of scenarios. It's probably been a couple months ago now. Two different types of scenarios and how would we use an information hub during those scenarios. And then I'm just a local government representative on the TAC working group as well. But as that representative, I'm a data consumer and a data provider, as are most local governments. And it's just been fascinating to hear from jurisdictions of all shapes and sizes and abilities, you know, how they serve up and then respond to utility requests. We've also heard from developers, which is fascinating. You know, what are they doing with what we give them? Why does DOT need the information they need so far in advance of their projects? Like, it's been interesting to get a lot of that sort of information, and those professional connections are invaluable as well.
I know one thing that Sallie brought up with TAC has been working on is like infrastructure. What do you make available to the general public to consume? And I know that's a hot topic, so you could really use a lot of input from local governments on their, you know, how they use infrastructure like water, sewer, electricity, and that kind of stuff. Do you make it available to everybody, or do you make parts of it available? So that's one thing to be thinking about to give input on.
Thanks. So related to this question, how is your local perspective important to the success of your working groups? So brag on yourself now.
So I don't know if I really want to brag on myself or Greenville right now, but what I want to do is kind of harp on the fact that this is an organization that is for all of the local governments, not just us as the volunteers that are currently serving. If you're hearing about all this data and you've got more questions, or you want to be involved in any way, we want to hear from you, because the city of Greenville's perspective is different from a smaller town or a bigger town. Actually, it's different from everybody's, because none of us are running our GIS shops the same way. None of us have the same, you know, type of GIS people in our shops. None of us are facing the same struggles. So, you know, it's my perspective is just as valuable as anybody else's perspective. And so that's one huge reason that I want to harp on the fact that this is open for everybody. You can come to a meeting, you can send an email if there's a data set that or a project you're struggling with. Start with the GICC, start with the LGC and say, hey, I need this data, or I don't understand what I need to do to make this data compliant for something. Because that's the whole point, is we're here to help with that. And if you're struggling, somebody else is probably too. And like I said, you don't have to be a big city or a small city to be struggling, because we're all struggling. There's something that none of us are getting quite right, and we wish we could do better. And so once we hear that stuff, you know, you can be helped on a small scale, or if we decide that might be something across the board, that might be a new project. So my perspective as the city of Greenville is it's important, but it's just as important as your perspective. And so I really would like to see everybody here show up to some of those meetings so that we can hear your perspective too, because you don't have to be a member. And that's the whole point. And so you can be involved in the new data sets, the hydro, the old data sets, the parcel, the addressing. If you're struggling, or if you've got any questions with that, you know, that's kind of what we want to hear from you, just as much as we want to hear from the members that are at the meetings every time.
Really great, Natalie. I can't add too terribly much to it, but I pretty much feel the same way. And again, that's the great thing about it. You know, it's a statewide organization with lots of different perspectives, lots of different disciplines, people from all levels of government, you know, some private, you know, just bringing all of those voices, all of those disciplines together, you know, with one common goal. You know, again, one of our favorite words, or upper management favorite words here in Pender is silos. You know, and it's not just a county problem, it's not just a municipal problem, it's a everywhere problem. So breaking those silos down, across the spectrum, right on up to, your highest levels of government, and bringing the necessary folks to the table. I think that's why it's extremely valuable to have, all types of local government representatives. Like Natalie said, Pender County's problems, yes, some may be unique or specific to Pender County, but a lot of them are not. So getting a wide range of experience, a wide range of disciplines, I think is very, very important. But understanding that it's open, again, just to harp on that, we just so happen to be asked, but there's plenty of people that can fill these roles, and anyone is welcome to comment and to communicate with the ones that are on the LGC or any of these other working groups. Just no one ever really knows it's a problem unless you bring it to our attention or to others' attention. So just get involved is the most important thing, regardless of your jurisdiction, regardless of your education. I tell people all the time, I didn't go to school for GIS. I went to school for business. I really have no background whatsoever in GIS. I did do a little land surveying back when I was in high school just to make some money. And that's really how I kind of got my foot in the door somewhat. So don't feel like you have to check all of these boxes to fulfill a role or to be able to talk to someone or to be able to serve on a committee or a board. Just get involved and let your voice be heard.
Josh, I want to like follow up on that. When I first started, I did not feel that I had enough experience, enough knowledge, enough anything to be involved. And that was an error on my fault, because that's not the case for any of this. If you're from a county, you're just as qualified as if you have 30 years at a city. There's no difference between the two of you. So don't let, where you think you might be or where you think that your organization might be, keep you back from being involved in anything. That's not just the LGC, that anywhere in your career, you're ready to volunteer and be a part of it. And so I just want to say that as something that I experienced when I was starting out and younger. I don't want anybody else to feel that same way. You're absolutely ready to be a part, and you're going to learn. You're going to learn more about things that you don't need to know about, and you're going to learn more about things that you do need to know about. So always, like, if you have an interest, you're welcome.
Well, and I'll expand on that. You can be involved at any time, at any level in your career. I mean, that is definitely, we definitely want to hammer that home. But specifically referencing the technical advisory committee for the infrastructure group, any group like that is automatically going to be unintentionally biased towards communities that have infrastructure, that have the GIS data for that infrastructure. And my role in that group is to remind people that we don't have that data. We don't have that infrastructure, whether it be natural gas information, for example, or telecom information. And so that local perspective of us not having that information is just as important as the municipalities who are involved, who do have that information. And the outcome of that is going to be some recommendations. If you are to develop this information, even if it's in-house or if it's something you intend to share, what should you focus on? What are the important, essentially, layers in GIS that are going to be the driving information for your organization and for data sharing? And for me, that's incredibly important. We can't just develop data because we feel like I've got to have some sort of path. And we may make progress along that path and we may not, but to have that path and to have that put together for us, the smaller jurisdictions put together, by a group like this is incredibly valuable. And without my involvement in it, I wouldn't honestly be terribly aware that this is going on. And so we do have a good number of folks from all different size organizations in that group. And I feel like that's a massive strength of that group. And the outcome is going to be just that much better because of those various perspectives.
Alice?
I mean, it's pretty much already been said, but I worked in Durham or lived in Durham most of my life, although New Bern's catching up pretty fast. So I know when I moved here to New Bern, I showed up 15 minutes early everywhere because there was no traffic. So, having different perspectives at different levels, like it's already kind of been mentioned, is key. So what is important for New Bern or Eastern North Carolina may not be as important for, the Raleigh area or the Durham area or the mountain areas. And what's important in the mountainous area, where we all do have common goals, that we all need parcel data, we all need road data, we all need other infrastructure. And I think it's also key for the companies that we deal with, that they get through this group, that they get an understanding of what our needs are as well, so that they can provide, especially for those agencies or areas that don't have staff, that they can provide the right kind of tools and stuff for them to use.
And I would also add to all of this, if you're in a small jurisdiction and you're running 3 jobs, you just touch on GIS as a part of one of them. I want to encourage you to join this group, because one of the goals of the LGC is to reach out to local jurisdictions in need and find ways to assist them. So it's not just a group of many different committees and working groups, but it's also a group that is designed to help each other, including the jurisdictions who need it. And sometimes even the larger jurisdictions need help in something that one of their neighbors has a strength in. So it may be learning from a neighbor, it may be actually physically helping out. So please join, and hopefully we can all help each other out and meet that goal that we have. All right, last question, how are we doing on time?
We've got 15 minutes.
Okay, great. So what has been the most rewarding thing about being an LGC or a GICC working group member?
I'll go first. So I feel like I keep repeating the same thing. So I'll try to be brief, but again, the platform, the networking, the people, everybody coming together for, one goal. And at the end of the day, doing what's best for your jurisdiction, your citizens, and the citizens of the state of North Carolina. The work we do, although it feels mundane, a lot of days, there are plenty of days I don't feel like doing what I'm doing, or miserable at work, not wanting to be there, but just being able to see that bigger picture of what all of us do matters, regardless of your position, how low down the totem pole you feel you are, without all of us working together for that common goal, it's just not going to work. But the networking and being able to pick up the phone at a moment's notice has just been fantastic. Bouncing ideas off each other and problems off each other has been fantastic. But I would have to say that that's probably what's been the most rewarding for me, and seeing things come together, initiatives, standards, even if, I didn't really play a major role in it, still as a collective, seeing things come to fruition has been pretty cool. So.
I think I'll join in. I think Josh kind of mentioned earlier, is you get rid of those silos. And 2 things come to mind when I think about this statement is Mr. Rogers, there's always look for the helpers, there's always helpers. And I think this really creates a great system where we can go out and find helpers when we need those helpers. Also, another statement I always kind of think of when I think of this group is I don't know what I don't know. And having these standards and stuff like that, you don't really, as GIS, you might not have time to think source that you can go and tap in. Well, I didn't even think about that. And probably lastly, just being able to come like somewhere like here where we can have just discussions and kind of brainstorm and come together as a group to try to do good for the state.
I think for me, I kind of came into the LGC the odd way. After Florence helping Josh out in Pender County, we had the realization that, we've talked about these silos. We were all data silos during that event, and we got to at least get the silos on the same farm. If not, talking to one another and seeing that kind of organic growth from a specific need all the way up to something that's now being worked on and recognized by the state, I think has just been mind-blowing, to be honest with you.
Natalie, do you have anything else to add? Okay, great. So we'll move on to Q&A. First of all, I want to thank all of the panelists for coming today and singing the praises of the LGC. It is an incredibly, incredibly important group to the success of GIS projects in the state and to the GICC. Without local input, like I said before, most things just would not get done in the state. So thank you all. Thank you all for being involved in this. And now I'll go ahead and open up the floor to questions. And while we're doing that, I'm going to pop up some reference links here. So the LGC has a story map, and we're always seeking new projects for that. You can reach out to us and get your project on there. It's essentially a list of all the different ways GIS is being used by local governments across the state. We also have the GICC website and the LGC webpage. You'll be able to get a list of all of the members of the working groups and committees on the LGC and GICC websites, and you'll be able to get links to the upcoming meetings.
Surely someone has questions.
You guys must have answered all the questions super well.
I see some discussions. Yeah, I see some discussions, but I don't see the question.
Is there anybody that's attended today that thinks that they might want to try to join a meeting or anything in the future? Do a little raise hand. I'd love to see some people just tune in, dial in, and because there's time for your input too, and we're looking forward to that.
Got some hands raised. That's awesome. Is there a way, Colleen, I'm not sure if you'll be able to, but can you post those links into the chat?
Absolutely.
That might be a little tricky, but could be helpful.
Yeah, hold on just a second here. I might be able to copy them from here.
Cool, thank you. Just such good discussion today. I mean, I'm a state government person, but this was just so interesting, and I 100% agree that local government is definitely the backbone of literally everything that happens.
See somebody, Harold, has got a question.
Oh yeah. So the question is, anyone know if the NC land record mapping specs are defunct now?
Cannot answer that question.
Colleen's been busy in there posting.
I don't know if it's been
links.
defunct. I know they have they just adopted a new way of reporting any changes to municipality boundaries and stuff. So to kind of steer, I know Bob Coates and the land records office has been spearheading that. So I don't know if Colleen wants to add to that.
Yeah, I don't know if that question is related to individual parcels. If so, that's outside my wheelhouse. I don't know, but we do have people on the local government committee that that specialize in that kind of thing, so we can get in touch with them for you. And if it is related to annexations, that process. We're trying to streamline the newest specs for municipal boundaries are actually going to kind of feed the annexations up to the county and then from the county to the state. And then the state would be able to pass that out to all the different state agencies that are asking for county bound or for annexations and the census. So it hopefully is kind of making that a little bit more streamlined and reducing some of the burden on local governments of reporting those to different agencies.
How are you going to handle when they don't properly record them? We get that a lot.
Yes, that's ongoing still. So
They do one part of the paperwork, but not the other, or the description it doesn't close and all that stuff.
yeah.
Trying to figure out how to get all 11 municipalities on the same page with our help to try and avoid that.
Yeah.
Hey, Colleen, it looks like Harold elaborated a little bit more on his question.
Okay. That one, I don't know.
All righty. Well, we're nearly at time. Just big thank you to all of the panelists. Thanks to Colleen for facilitating the discussion. This was a really great way to start day 3 and the final day of the conference. We'll have a poll that will be appearing asking if you've learned anything in this session. For me, it's a big yes. Thanks to everyone for attending this session. We'll be resuming at 10 a.m. So we've got about a 20-minute break. The presentations that we've got coming up are a presentation on census with Bob Coates, a hands-on Postgres workshop with Chola Jane, and a presentation on attribute rules with Jordan Carmona. So some interesting things to look forward to. So thanks everyone.